Hi, everyone, and welcome to the demo. I'm Camille Weiner, and in this session, I'll be walking through the process of manually exporting and importing data from Razor's Edge NXT into HubSpot. While this demo covers the manual steps, I want to let you know that if you're looking for a more streamlined, automated solution, we offer Razor Sync. It's our pre-mapped integration that can save you tons of time and effort. But today we're going to focus on the hands-on process so you can understand exactly how a manual data transfer works. So in this session, we'll cover how to export your data from Razor's Edge NXT, how to map your data to match HubSpot's properties, and step-by-step instructions for importing your data into HubSpot. If you find yourself looking for a more automated solution down the road, Razor Sync is here to help streamline that process even further. The first step when getting ready to do an export from Razor's Edge NXT to HubSpot is to prepare your Razor's Edge data. You'll want to go into Razor's Edge and start your export by understanding what data you want to go over into HubSpot. It's going to do an export under the web view here. So you're going to want to get your constituent list, and then separately, you're going to get a gift list as well. So looking at the constituent list, I've hidden some of the more private data here, but you would usually see the name of your constituent and other information in these first few columns. You can always edit these columns to export only the fields that you want to export. So you'll want to use these different filters to do that. Here it shows how you can do everyone or individuals and organizations only. For this purpose, to export from Razor's Edge NXT into HubSpot, you can just do everyone. I'm going to show you how you can put all of it in one spreadsheet, getting ready to import it into HubSpot and keep them mixed together. So you'll want to go ahead and hit this, and you would apply, and then you want to go ahead and start an export in your file. So there are a few settings that you'll want to go through. It's very straightforward here in Razor's Edge. Most likely you probably already know how to do that anyway. And then you would do the same thing for your GIFs. You'll want to export all your constituents and then export your GIFs. Then you'll have those exports ready to start mapping the fields over to HubSpot. The next step is to prepare your file for import into HubSpot. And so to start doing that, it's always good to download one of HubSpot's sample files. So here in their knowledge base, they do have a page called Sample Import Files where you can go. They have listed out here a number of different sample files that you can download and use to help guide you in mapping your fields. So you'll see here they have one object files if you're just doing contacts alone or deals, campaigns, etc. There's some sample files there. They also have object association sample files. In this case, we're doing multiple objects into one spreadsheet, into one import. Here they have a list of sample sheets, templates already there. For example, contacts and companies, contacts companies with association labels, contacts and tickets. I don't actually see what I want here because in this demo, I'm importing into HubSpot from Razor's Edge constituents and GIFs. With the constituents, I'm importing both individual constituents and company constituents. That would be contacts in HubSpot and companies in HubSpot. So I want those two objects already. For the GIFs, I'm going to be importing them as deals into HubSpot. I want those specific three types of objects all in one spreadsheet. It tells us in here that if we don't see what we want, we can generate our own example file. And some instructions here about how to do that. I'm going to show you that right now. Here's the instruction which shows you how to walk through your import so you can get a download example file for exactly the objects that you want to import. I've gone to import and I'll show you how I got there. Under contacts in my HubSpot portal, there's a button in the upper right to import. So I hit that, and now I've got this window, and I'm going to go ahead and say I want to import a file. It's going to give me a little guidance here as to how I would like to start. So I'm going to start my import. Here's where I get to pick the exact objects that I'm going to be wanting to import all in one file. I want companies, which are constituent organizations. I want contacts, which are constituent individuals, and I want deals, which are GIFs. Check the box for all those. Now it's going to seem like I'm going to import, but I'm not actually doing that yet. I'm just going to grab my sample files. Right here is where I get to download my example file. So I'm going to go ahead and download that and save it to my computer hard drive. That's how you download that sample file from HubSpot. Let's go over to our files that you have from your download in Razor's Edge NXT. So I've already uploaded those files for me into Google Sheets so I can start to work on my data spreadsheet. So this is what it would be like if you had your constituent files. You would upload that or open Excel, whichever way that you're processing the data here. And so this is what the constituent file would be. You would also have a separate file for GIFs. I've already uploaded these to Google Sheets, and now I'm going to start to process my sheet to get it ready to import into HubSpot. There's a few important steps here that are customized to this particular process with Razor's Edge NXT and HubSpot. So I'm going to walk you through how to manipulate the data files here so that you can get the right data into one sheet and then map that and upload it into HubSpot. This is the next step you take so that you can make sure you have all your fields from Razor's Edge, both in the GIFs export and constituents export. Now, for simplicity's sake, I've deleted a lot of the columns that were here. Yours will look different depending on which fields you decided to export from Razor's Edge. You may have your own custom fields that you exported from Razor's Edge that you'll see here. You'll have a file that looks like this, except we'll have real data rather than fake data. You will have a gift file that has the fields that you chose to export. We're going to merge these two files. In order to get everything on one sheet, our sample HubSpot file kind of starts to help us and guide us towards how we are going to map all of these different objects and the fields. So we have company, contact, and then deal here. So this is how we can get all three in one sheet. As long as you include at least one value for each of the objects in a column, you're going to have data from all the three objects, and you'll be able to map those all at once in one import. This sample template gives you an idea of how to do this. I have my file here, my template from HubSpot, just as a reference. I have to get the constituents and the GIFs all in one, right? In order to do that, I need to match the GIFs to the constituent so that when you're in the constituent file here, you're going to have the row is going to be everything related to that constituent, and the GIFs will be associated with the right constituent because it'll be on the same row. So what I've done, I've already done this, so I'll just walk you through what I did so far, and then I'll pick up where I left off and show you how to proceed forward from there. In this sheet, I've highlighted in each of these sheets the constituent ID on the constituent file. And then over here on the gift export, we have what's called the constituent lookup ID. These two are very important. This is how we're going to do a lookup from one sheet to another to match the constituent with the gift. You want to make sure this is in column A. So I already took this column and moved it into column A in the GIFs file. I did the same thing with the constituent file. There are different formulas that you can use that it doesn't matter what column the key data is in. I'm used to using VLOOKUP, and so that's the one I'm using. And what VLOOKUP does is it'll look up in the first column and match it to the column in the other sheet in the same column. So that's how we're going to match up constituents with GIFs. So as you can see in this constituent file, I have all these fields here for the constituent. These are the fields that I'm choosing to use for this demo. And then I have my gift properties as well, which go all the way over here. I've narrowed those down so that we could have a simpler scaled down amount of fields, even though it's still quite a few fields. Hopefully this will be close to realistic in terms of what you might be doing in your export if you're really exporting a lot of different fields. So what I want to do is take my constituent file. I'm going to use that as my master file. I have the constituent data going all the way over here. Then I have a column where I started to do the VLOOKUP. I want to continue from here and put my gift properties in these columns. So I'm going to go to my gift column. I'm going to take all the fields that I have, just the name, the header, the field, right? This is for the mapping purposes. So I copied just the headings, and I'm going to go over to this sheet, and I'm going to start from where the constituent fields end, and I'm going to copy and paste. Now this is where the fields for gifts start. I hope you're with me so far. And then what I've started to do is my VLOOKUP. So what this does is it takes this value here, 756, and the constituent ID, it goes over to my other sheet, which is called anonymized gifts, and it looks up that same value and matches the record. So it's going to look up 756 over here. And when it finds 756, then it's going to give me the whole row for that particular number. And that is how I'm going to match up my constituents with their gifts. I've already done the matching. In this case, for example, this is the system record ID. If we go to system record ID, that's this column here. Just so you know, I have shortened my ultimate list of constituents to make this a bit simpler. It doesn't have every single one in here. So that's how I'm doing it for the demo. You might have a very long list to deal with. So you'll have to be patient and work through it. I've already checked that 562 is the system record ID that goes with constituent ID 756. So I'm going to check that one more time. I'm going to find the constituent ID. There it was. It's here. Let's see where to go. So it's 756. And then what I want to do is make sure that I have the right column aligning. So the system record ID number, which is, might help if I freeze view this particular row. And then I can go back and find that. I want it to be in the first column over there. So there it is, lookup ID. And then I want the system record ID to be 4397. And that's how I can tell that I have the right thing going on. This says column 3 instead of column 2. If I change this to column 2, I'm going to see the right number. So I know I'm on the right track because 756 constituent ID, 4397 system record ID. And so if I go back over here, I can see that those two things match. So now what I want to do is make sure that I have that number correct all the way down. As you can see, and this is just a matter of how advanced you are with spreadsheets and formulas, I have these dollar signs here. That's to keep this the same no matter what cell I drag it into, because I always want it to look up in the other sheet. I want it to look up this range, and I don't want that range to change as I copy down my formula. So I want to make sure those dollar signs are there. But when it comes to this part of the formula, I want it to change depending on the row we're on. So that's why I can drag it down now. And now I have the right data in there, starting with system record ID. And then I'm going to go from there with the following ones. And the way I'm going to do that is simply drag this across. Now I believe this should work. Let's see. So now when I go over to this column, I have to change this to make sure it stays as the same lookup. So now if we keep that the same, we have to keep changing this column right here. This number has to correspond with the number of columns over that it's getting the data from. So we want this to be 3. So we'll have to keep programming these as we go down and get all of our fields. This is why you just have to work with it, be patient with yourself. Now I actually can't do this, so I'm going to take this out because it's not allowing me to change it. So it's a process to get this right. Now if I do this, I should be good to go. It should say 3. Okay. Awesome. Now we'll just do this. Now we have the gift ID, which is the third column. So it's third column here, and it's still looking up for me A4, then going down the columns to make sure I input the corresponding data for that constituent ID. So again, as you can see, it does take a little bit of trial and error and just making sure that I'm doing everything right. You might want to have somebody check your work before you go ahead and import your data. So this was 2, 3, and this will be 4. So I want to copy this over here. I'm going to have to change it to A because it automatically adjusts to the next column, but I don't want to do that. And then I want this to be 4. So I'm going to go and check and make sure I have that correct. So I'll copy that. And then I'm going to do it again. Again, I have to go back in here and make sure this still says A. And now I want this to be number 5. Donor name, fake name, starting to see the pattern here. Copy this again and move it over. Now this always has to be A, and this should be the next number, the next column over 6. And I get the date, it looks good to me. And then I've got one more here. So we want to make sure this says A, always looking up from column A. And we want this to be the next column over 7. It's type, it's a one-time gift. From there, now we are starting to have the gifts and the constituents together. Next thing we want to do is make sure that we get it ready for importing into HubSpot. All right, we are now ready to import our data into HubSpot. So let me reveal where we are with the spreadsheet. We did a VLOOKUP to combine the constituents and the gifts together all in one sheet, the gift to the correct constituents. And so that's all been done. It's all been applied to all of the columns that we are bringing in data for. There are a few more things we just need to do to get ready to get everything into HubSpot. One of the things that I realized about putting the companies, contacts, and deals all in one is that the companies and contacts are actually going to have a bit more confusion when it comes to sharing the same field names. So in HubSpot, they might have the same field names, but one field will be with the company object and the other field will be with the contact object. So what I ended up doing here was once I did all my VLOOKUP and got all the data together and did the headers that I'll explain in a moment, I separated them into two different sheets, one for the individual constituent type and their gifts, and one for the organizational constituent type and their gifts. So we're just going to look for the purposes of this demo at the constituent individuals. Another thing that I added here into this sheet is that I took from the HubSpot example how they use these very descriptive headers. This is the field label for the property. This is the object, and this is the internal field name for the property. They've formatted it this way so that in your data sheet, you can identify, if you're combining two different objects in one sheet, you can identify the object in the brackets, and you can also find the internal name in HubSpot. And so the internal name, I'll show you how to do that here, is if you go to properties, I'm going to the settings at the top here, and then I'm going to go to my properties, the itself. You can also say edit property. And right here, you're going to find the internal name. So if you want to be thorough and make sure that your data is going to in HubSpot, and you may want to identify that ahead of doing your data. You can create a sheet, for example, and organize your fields by the different platforms, just so that you can organize and make sure that you're identifying the right data to go into the correct field in HubSpot. If you've got a lot of data and you've got all these different headers, it could get confusing. Let's say I did this. I think this is actually, say, fun description would be the internal field name. That way, there's no confusion as to where this goes. I'm giving the field label and the internal name, and that it goes to a deal object. And so this is going to give HubSpot exact direction to where you want to go. If your import is fairly extensive with a lot of fields, I think it's worth it to take the time to do that. Now for deals, you have to have these 3 properties filled in for the deal. I needed to make sure I have both the stage, the pipeline, and also a deal name. And took one of the fields from Razor's Edge and I just renamed it the deal name. And if I put the internal name here, I'll be all set. Once I get into my import, you might want to fill in each and every header and make sure that you have both the object and the internal name and then the field label. That's the way to ensure that you're getting the best import process where you're less likely to make mistakes and have errors. The other thing is you need to make sure that whatever this field is in HubSpot, it matches in terms of the type of field that it is. If this was a numeric field in HubSpot, you're going to get an error here. And so you want to make sure that you match those up as well. So those are some of the things to look for when you're doing an import. For the sake of this demo, we haven't covered all of that here because that does take time. So expect to take a little time with your data in terms of getting it ready to map into HubSpot. In fact, you'll probably want to do it in a few different work sessions just so you can make sure that everything is there and that you come back to it with fresh eyes. You might want to take notes as you go. For example, I would take notes about the VLOOKUP that I did. You could add a sheet in your workbook and just take notes, especially if you're working with a team, so that if you happen to be sharing the spreadsheet and you're all working on the data together, you can help each other and understand what's been done in the sheet and document that process. So now I'm going to export my sheet and get ready to import it into HubSpot. We are all set and ready to import our data into HubSpot. I am going to get going on that process here. I'm going to go to Contacts, Import. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and import my file, start my import. Great. So I have two different sheets. I have one with constituent individuals and deals and one with constituent organization and deals or gifts. So I'm going to do, for the purpose of this demo, a contact and a deal. And I'm going to go through this fairly straightforward because every import is going to be different and you're going to come across different things potentially as you do your import. When you come up against something that maybe you forgot or you're just learning for the first time that you have to fix, you can always just cancel out of here and then go back and get your file better prepared and then go ahead and start over again. That's not a big deal. So I'm going to bring these in as new contacts and new deals only. It's a little more complicated if you're bringing in and updating records, especially when you have deals. So I'm just going to do it this way for this demo. And now here's HubSpot showing me, hey, here's your fields that are all ready and set to go. And then here's some where you have to match up the field, and you definitely have to match it up to all of these fields. So I've got the deal stage already there. Now it's telling me you haven't matched up the deal name or the pipeline, and you absolutely have to do that. So I'm going to go ahead here. It's just saying it's unable to check errors. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Deal property is the name. I'm going to go here. I want the pipeline, which is the donation. There you go. This is a donation. I think I am all set here. It says, for some reason, I'm now ready to import my file. And even though I have a few errors, you want to make sure you don't have any errors. I have a property that I don't have it formatted to fit the deal names. This is one of those required properties that it's persnickety. You'll want to make sure you have a field that will go into the deal name property and be the same format. For the sake of finishing this up, I'm just going to go ahead and let those errors go. And I'm going to check these boxes here. I'm going to create a list. I agree that I have permission to create this list from those contacts. I have my import. I've created a list. I can also view my import here in the import area of the portal. I can also go over to lists because I checked the box to create a list. This one, because this was a previous. So once that you can do when you're in here and you have your list is you can go ahead and edit your columns to view the columns that you really want to see. So if you want to go in and find all the columns that you brought in, you can come in here and check those boxes. Now I'm just going to check the ones that are related to our integration here. I'll just check a few just so you can see what this looks like. And that's how you can get a quick glance at your data and see how it's coming in. And that's how you import data from Razor's Edge NXT into HubSpot. Thanks for watching.